Doctor Who, Timeless Tales, Westphall. Written by Joshua Carpenter. Read by Oliver Martin. Where had I manifested myself this time? My form slowly hovered down, the landscape unfolding into view like the page of a book turning over. Lush greens and delicate blues spreading outward into the expanse. I looked down as pure white feet felt the warm sand. Once the shifting grains settled, the only sound to behold was the gentle splash of the waves and the wild calls of parakeets. It was paradise made reality. As my solitary form stood and watched across the horizon, my will was for this status quo to remain. Tranquility, everlasting. My tranquility. As I decided on certain details, they came to pass. The sand would be completely undisturbed, save for my own touch. The leaves of the palm trees fluttering in a slight breeze. It would be perfect, I decided. For in such tranquility, what else is there to do but perfect it? But the parakeets' chirping persisted, present but hidden from view. I looked across to the trees as the breeze strengthened into a gust. My disdain grew as it slowly became a gale, and as much as I tried, it could not be ceased. The sky clouded and greyed. The sea churned and rumbled. As my focus shifted, I failed to notice the glaring red eyes stalking me from the shadows between trees. What plagues my tranquility? Questions and thoughts flooded through my head as the first drops of rain began to fall. How could such peace be ruined in mere moments? The downpour intensified and sand cooled and clumped, the foamy tips of waves reaching closer and closer to where I stood. Why can't things ever stay perfect? I turned at the rustle of branches behind, watching as the first shadow attacked me, in my own paradise. The strike unbalanced me, the flashing red and searing pain unfamiliar to me at this state. The shadow was isolation. The thought imprinted itself in my mind, lingering like a sour taste. Sensing my moment of weakness, another shadow lunged from the trees, claws piercing my form. Loneliness. As I was forced to kneel from the attack's intensity, the sand I stood on began to give way. I started to sink. In panic I looked around, only to now see hungry, glowing eyes fixed on me. As doubt reared itself, I had to clutch my side, silently screaming. As burdensome plagued me, I realised my legs had been swallowed into the ground. As guilt seeped into my body, thunder cracked the dark sky into the raging sea. As heartache pounded in my chest, I realised the top layer of sand now began to envelop my neck. My arms stretched out for any sort of leverage. I looked upwards instinctively for air, despite not needing it. From the storm clouds, red eyes bore down upon my weakling form, every glare a torture. Thunderbolts morphed into sharp fangs, constantly nattering at the raging sea, hungering for more of my essence. As fear washed over me, the final grains of sand fell. I was finally entombed. A hand grabbed mine. The strong grip became a lifeline to tug on, to pull myself up out of the quicksand. My head was slowly freed. My saviour now in view. A brown, floppy fedora, dampened by the rain, rested atop a bed of curls for hair. Below that, an ancient face creased, eyes scrunched up and imposing teeth gritted at the effort. A lengthy scarf wrapped several times over his neck, dangling down and tickling the ground with tassels, failing to conceal the bohemian hodgepodge of coats and shirts that made up his outfit.
Come on.
The stranger pulled me from the saddle, which had now turned more into mulch. His arms and chest and eventually legs were wormed out. The clouds watched on and seemed to screech and roar in protest.
Oh, nearly.
With a final tug, we both stumbled and collapsed onto the wet ground. Chunks of sand popped up from the fall, landing on and around my helper, the rain still pelting down upon us. Who was this stranger who walks among my creation? As my mind wandered, the stranger raised himself from the beach floor, dusting his legs roughly with his hands. He frowned and glanced around, oblivious to the storm around him. He seemed to read the stories of every tree, every leaf and wave on the ocean.
Well,
he murmured to himself.
Brighton has certainly let itself go.
He started to peruse around the landscape, hands slipping into pockets.
The bushes could certainly do with trimming back, don't you think?
I'd only realised he was addressing me a few seconds after the fact, looking round to face him as he gave a sudden, mischievous grin. I stayed sat on the sand as he sauntered towards me, plopping down by my side. Only now, I could see him for who he really was. This being had many forms and faces, but I could see beyond physical appearances to identify his character, his soul. He was the runaway Time Lord, the Doctor.
You know, I've built quite an adept intuition when it comes to time. Something tells me you've picked the wrong day for the beach.
His sly smile disappeared as he looked up at the lingering red eyes. Crashes of light and sound threatened him, but he never flinched. He called out to them, glaring at them as much as they did him.
The weather's positively ghastly.
The Doctor held no bars, staring up in defiance against the shadows in the sky. The thunder stopped. The rain ceased. The giant red eyes that glared down so furiously at me finally closed. The clouds parting to let the pale blue shine through. The shadows were all gone. What could have made such darkness cower in its corner? What could fear have to fear? What could heartache have to lose? I picked myself up off the floor, the sand drying and warming under my feet again. Paradise resetting. The Doctor remained, watching my work unfold. His clothes, like the sand, were miraculously dried, but he didn't pay attention. The view was too captivating for the both of us.
There we are. That's better. Keep your face to the sun, and you will never see the shadows, I think someone once said. Or perhaps they didn't. Who's to say? Maybe they will one day.
The traveller and I watched as the sun accelerated, the sky changing colours and shades from midday to sunset. For the first time, him and I both recognised each other. Free of conflict, we could see who the other was, our lives laid out as a pile of stories to read and watch. In that moment, neither of us needed words to speak.
I wonder why I'm here.
The Doctor glanced over at me as the thought crossed his lips.
As last I recall, I was in my TARDIS going, well, it's the funniest thing. I don't seem to know where I was going. Do you?
The glint in his eye made out like he knew I couldn't answer, as if he already had the answers to every question.
I would say it was the Time Lords, but they're normally much more ostentatious than this.
He squirrelly pulled out a brown paper bundle, unfurling it and picking out a single jelly baby from within, before absent-mindedly sliding it into his mouth and chewing away. His hand reached out to my form, sweets clutched in the palm.
Would you like one? Terribly rude not to ask my host.
I noted the sly notion slid in his tone. Unsurprisingly, it seemed the Doctor knew more than he let on. Ever the trickster. My hand reached into the bag, picking up one of the delicacies between my fingers. Before remembering I couldn't enjoy the taste or texture here, I politely returned it.
You don't know what you're missing. It's a shame I don't have the TARDIS to hand. A few sandwiches, some scones. This could have made a lovely picnic with Sarah and Harry.
We both paused to look at one another, the light on his face grading from orange to pink.
Maybe next time.
The sun had almost entirely set now. Twinkles of stars shimmering in the clear sky. The moon benevolently drifted into view to join them, as if to wave us off. The doctor tipped his hat in my direction, bowing like an actor at curtains call, and grinning like his audience demanded an encore.
Goodbye.
My eyes fluttered open, the whole world sideways. Raising my head off the desk, I felt the mess my hair had become after the hour-long nap. The laptop screen reacted as I brushed my keys clumsily with my hand, momentarily blinding me. The blinking cursor became the centre of my focusing sight, a never-ending reminder my project was waiting for me. The room was dark around me, but for the glimpse of sunlight peeking through the curtains. Everything laid in a chaotic order, a cryptic system only I could ever understand. Snacks waited to be picked up and picked at, while scribbles and notes spewed out from the desk to the floor. Still the cursor blinked, vying for my attention. A constant nag. There were dissertations to finish, coursework to type up, pre-recorded lectures to watch. Maybe, if I had the time and energy. Although energy wasn't something I had a great deal of recently. Before I could consider typing any more, my stomach rumbled. I glanced down to the corner of the screen. 1:37. I'd have to get a late lunch. I slipped into jeans and a suitable shirt, making sure my mouth was covered by my mask before heading outside. The warm sun fought through the clutter of clouds, making for a warm day. Hardly anyone was out to bask in it. Only a couple of people strolled past, all but their eyes covered from view. What was once a creepy sight had somehow become second nature. I shut myself out from the eerie public and foreign sensations, plugging in my headphones and pressing play before I began to walk. Listening to audio stories was a great distraction from the world around me. I'd chosen a recent favourite, Genetics of the Daleks. The confrontation between the Fourth Doctor and the single Dalek survivor filled my ears and imagination, their iconic voices easing my journey. After a while, I refined my focus back to the real world, looking forward to see a faint but familiar outline, translucently filled with the same features as the person in my lucid dream. From the fedora, grinning face and nonconformist outfit, down to his feet where his scarf's multicoloured tassels hovered over the ground. The iconic figure. The Fourth Doctor. He fit just as well in the urban street as he did the utopia in my mind, somehow completely and yet not all at the same time.
Now about that picnic.
Picnic? You're not real. His grin quickly shifted into a pretend offended glance.
Not real? Not real? How very presumptuous of you.
You know... I suddenly realised how loudly I was speaking, and reverted to a whisper. You know what I mean. You're just from my head.
Perhaps I rode here on the ship of Theseus. If I'm the Doctor in your mind, doesn't that make me the Doctor in your reality?
He paused to let the thoughts sink in.
The more important question isn't how, but why.
What do you mean?
Well...
The Doctor interacted with the surroundings, finding a nearby bench and sitting on it.
Surely if I'm a figment of your imagination, you must have thought me up for a reason.
I sat next to his non-existent form while he slipped Jelly Baby into his mouth, awaiting my answer with quiet intrigue. With everything that's going on, everything that has gone on, I'm alone. I miss my friends and family. I miss her. The doctor stayed pensively silent before feeling bold enough to respond.
I've been able to perform lots of little miracles throughout my journeys to a lot of different people. But I regret I can't take away the heartache you must feel. In a way, however, that grief is proof of your love. And who am I to take that away? These times are certainly a test for anyone. But I've always found humans have an indomitable quality about them. Despite the great forces of adversity your species faces, you always seem to find the strength to rise above it together. You might be physically alone right now, but that doesn't mean you've not got people there for you.
I scoffed at the predictability of that comment.
You laugh, but I'm a being of your own creation. Anything I've thought, you thought first.
His intelligent eyes and beaming grin both annoyed and comforted me. Somehow, he was smarter than me despite being from my own mind.
But you still feel alone sometimes, even when people are around you.
His voice softened to convey sincerity that I could only nod in response to.
Those fears, they are monsters I can't just use my sonic screwdriver on. But
he leaned in, as if to tell one of his plenty secrets.
You have a secret tool of your own you can use.
I do?
Oh yes. When you face your darkest foes, you have Doctor Who to help you dream of your next bright adventure.
With one last smile, and a knowing tap on the nose, his translucent being retreated back into my mind, and I was left on the bench alone. Alone. But not. The doctor was right. I had people there for me whenever I needed them, and in dark moments, I had his stories to inspire me. I smiled to myself, put my headphones back on, and continued on our adventures.